Hi, everyone. This is Sonja Robinson hosting the Sun Talk Radio Show, Sustainable Urban Network, Saturdays at 3 p.m. on GODradio1.com for us to scale up our neighborhoods.
Tune in to Sun Sustainable Urban Network Talk Radio Show on GODradio1.com. Get up, get out, and get green. You can't let Earth pass us by. You got to scale up our neighborhood, y'all.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another day in Sun, Sustainable Urban Network, where we provide information to provide you in order for you to improve your quality of life so you can scale up your neighborhoods, such as a sustainable project. So a sustainability project, look at areas of environmental, climate justice, as well as we address racial, social, and economic inequity, with panels and specialists to chime in and provide their experience, their wisdom, as we move forward to improve our neighborhoods and our communities. So as we have the last few shows, we want to honor those and respect those that unfortunately lost their lives due to violence as well as racial injustice in our country. And so out of respect for that, I will name these names. We know there's many more, but just out of respect for that, we will give a moment of silence. George Floyd, Eric Gardner, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Tyrone West, Sean Reed, and Robert Fuller. 8 to 9 seconds of silence, please. All right, so today, our show today will be focusing on racial justice with the emphasis of Juneteenth and what Juneteenth means to us. So we have a wonderful panel to discuss these qualities of Juneteenth, where it originated from, and how it means to everyone throughout the country of the United States. So as we normally do, we have a normal cadence and rhythm to share information that's happening as we're moving forward to our discussion. So one of the things I wanted to share is a reflection. The reflection just kind of helps set the tone of the discussions that we're going to talk about. And so our reflection for today's show is coming from our very own respectful, honorable Frederick Douglass, who is a leader in a abomination of the emancipation movement in the United States. And so the reflection reads as, quote, "I prayed for freedom for 20 years, but received no answer until I prayed with my legs." So in essence, get up and move and do something. And we do honor those that are out there marching even today to bring about the justice that we need in our communities. Our very beloved Harriet Tubman, also a mover and a leader, an honorable leader of the civil rights activist, as well as an author and writer. And her quote reads such as, "Now I've been free. I know what a dreadful condition slavery is. I have seen hundreds of escaped slaves, but I never saw one who was willing to go back and be a slave." So again, where we're at right now, the climate of our country, we understand that, no one is free unless we're all free. And so we are definitely moving forward into that direction to receive that. So as every show, we want to also share our Sun Enlightenments. And these are inspired by our modern thought teacher, Don Miguel Ruiz, his 4 agreements. We have our Sun Enlightenments. And our Sun Enlightenments read as, 1, be responsible with your resources. 2, take the state of the climate of our racial justice and social justice seriously. 3, don't wait for others, but do your part. And 4, give your very best and loving effort to do so. And in doing that, we believe that you will receive the justice or the scalability, improving your neighborhoods as we're talking about. Every show we have Fossil Shade. We also have those Sunshine Awards. Sunshine Awards are those that are championing the things of environmental, climate justice, racial, social, economic justice, as well as our Fossil Shade are those that oppose the movement that we're making. And so as before, Derek Michael Chabon, date of birth, March 19th, 1976, the police officer that killed George Floyd, is definitely the fossil shade. In addition to our local fossil shade for this show is the County of San Diego that wanted to pass a fake climate action plan. Let's do better, County of San Diego. We can do a lot better to improve the lives and neighborhoods of those here in the County of San Diego. So we want to make mention that our Environmental Climate Justice Committee with the NAACP has taken a lead in the county towards protecting our solar customers. We're also moving forward with our racial justice letter. And so stand by for more information on that. So now that we have our panel here, I also want to make mention before I introduce them that, I don't know, did you hear that PGE was fined $3.5 million and they plead guilty to felony manslaughter with no prison time for those fires that's happened in Northern California. $3.5 million, and they did plead guilty of manslaughter. That's very important to note that. But no jail time? That's a thought, right? So Portland and the city council out there, they approved and cut $15 million from their police budget. So Portland, Oregon cut $15 million from their police budget in order to allocate it to other organizations that are doing the fight and helping to protect our communities. And I think that deserves a round of applause. Thank you, Portland, Oregon, for leading on that effort. Also, another mention, please, everyone, stay prayerful. There is a lot of things that are happening in our communities and across the country. And there is a march that is scheduled to happen tomorrow. So let's stay prayerful. The City of Hope with Bishop Dr. Terrell Fletcher, Miles McPherson with The Rock, and with other churches, they were out on the corners, what we want to call the four corners of life in San Diego, praying for our city. And so I'm asking for others that watch this, that you also pray today, tomorrow, and continue to make sure that God's angels are protecting those within our cities and moving forward. So our Sunshine of the Ward, we got to give it up to the governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia and Pharrell Williams gave Juneteenth as a paid holiday. Virginia, everyone. Jamestown, remember your history. Virginia, that's huge, that's major. So they have a paid holiday on Juneteenth. So I want to give up the Sunshine Award for them. Our Assembly member, Dr. Weber, with our ACA 5 to overturn Prop 209 for affirmative action. And as I mentioned, that any of those that wanted to rescind or not agree with those senators that appealed the Affordable Care Act, they get the fossil shade. Now, I want to make since today's show is about Juneteenth, all of our community members and organizations such as the NAACP and so many others, the Cooper family, they have their Juneteenth celebration, and so many other groups and organizations through our city, our county, and our country. You guys all get the Sunshine Award for the Sun Network. Thank you. So as we are talking about Juneteenth, I want to start off with our a topic supportive commentary. And it reads, Juneteenth History. This year commemorates a 155-year anniversary of celebrating Juneteenth, a holiday that recognized the last enslaved African Americans in the US being declared free. The Emancipation Proclamation was issued by President Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863. However, the news of freedom did not reach Texas until 2.5 years later. It came by way of Major General Gordon Granger, who announced General Order Number 3 to the people of Galveston, Texas on June 19, 1965. And it read, Buki, would you like to read the second part?
People of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. And the connection herefore existing between them becomes that between employer and free laborer. The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness either. There are elsewhere.
So today's show, again, thank you, Bookie, for that commentary reading. So for today's show, again, we're focusing on Juneteenth for our racial justice series. And as always, we have a theme song. And so our theme song will be played, and we will announce all our wonderful guests here that we have a panel discussion discussing Juneteenth in our racial justice series. So as our theme song is being prompted up, I will mention that we have Sydney Cooper from the Cooper family. We have Deborah Taylor representing many different states and organizations. We have firefighter Robbie Stevens. We have Dr. Darwin Fishman, as well as Miss Buki Domingos on this special discussion of Juneteenth. So this purpose is to elevate our Juneteenth awareness, to learn more about our history, and also pitch questions of how our listeners and viewers can gain more insight and support us, and why should they? And why should this be important to all communities of ending slavery and not just the Black community? So we will move forward, and the first question I would like to ask will be to you, Miss Deborah Taylor. Why do you think Juneteenth should be celebrated, and why is it important to you? And why do you think it's celebrated throughout our communities?
When I think about Juneteenth, I think about the first time I ever heard of it. I was a child between the ages of 4 to 6, and my father was telling us about Juneteenth and how it was celebrated in Texas. And our grandfather, Papa Peter Walker, he would be responsible for fixing all of the barbecue in the city of Wheelock and surrounding counties. And my dad, at 9 years old, he was responsible for serving up the Sweet Lucy, the red drink that came to be popular, and some people now serve it as strawberry soda in celebration of Juneteenth. Well, he was 9 years old. He was in charge of his Sweet Lucy station. And of course, 9 years old, you get to do and have as much as you want. And what did my dad do? He drank too much Sweet Lucy.
That was Papa?
That was Papa. So whenever I think about Juneteenth, I think about that, the first letter of June, joy, because it just uplifts me to think about the joy that the celebration of Juneteenth brings, the unity of bringing all of the people in the community together in Pueblo, Colorado. That was such an amazing time for us, because it went from being a little street festival celebration at Simmons Downbeat to migrating to Bessemer Park, where every community came together in Bessemer Park and celebrated Juneteenth. Black, white, everybody, Greeks, Jews, everybody came together to celebrate Juneteenth. So that's the second thing, that the joy, the unity, it's necessary for us to proclaim our freedom. We can't just sit back and say, they did it, and that's enough. No, it's necessary for us to remind people about our equal rights and the tradition and the celebration. I think about how my babies, Tiffany and Shannon, marched in Juneteenth dolls in the Juneteenth parade that went from being small in the area of Mesa Junction all the way up to Bessemer. And the group would, so outstanding. They marched in the State Fair Parade, the Fiesta Day Parade, and thinking about the entertainment of the Juneteenth, where you played basketball and had baseball. And that's how my son Trevor got his name, treasure Trevor because he was winning all the gold medals
Yeah.
in every
Yup.
event.
Thank you so much. Sydney Cooper, the Cooper Juneteenth family. Would you please share with us why Juneteenth is important to you? Why is it important to our community? And why is it so important for your family to continue to carry on the tradition of celebrating Juneteenth in San Diego?
Yeah. So for us, it marks the day of freedom. And I would have to say, that's the first time I heard of the Lucy drink. That's cool. I really like that. That's awesome. Even though I've been celebrating it all my life, you learn something about it all the time. So I think this group is awesome. So, but for us and for me, I think it marks the march to freedom and to civil rights. In 1865, in June 19th, when the Union troops reached Galveston and set the last slaves free, that to me, that marks the day to not only our freedom, but towards civil rights and having a much autonomy about our lives and becoming a community. Our family, really, we took it from my father. My father was a businessman on Imperial Avenue in San Diego. He was from Redbird, Oklahoma, not Texas, but when he made it to San Diego and he made it his mission to celebrate and educate the community about Juneteenth. And when he passed about 17 years ago, my sisters and my mother, who's still alive, bless her heart, she just made 90. She put up the mantle, and we expanded it and made it a mission of ours to educate the community about Juneteenth and carry on that legacy for our father, who was adamant about we should be celebrating Juneteenth like it was July 4th. And
Right.
so that's what we did every year. And so it's grown over the years. We're blessed. We have a foundation, we have a committee, and things like your show right here gets the word out for us. And I'm really blessed to be here with you guys.
Thank you so much. And speaking of 90th and 90th birthdays, I have to give a big shout out to my Uncle Carl Stevens, who turned 90 this week and was celebrated today with his frat brothers. And so his son is here, my cousin, Robbie Stevens. Robbie, can you share with us about Juneteenth and what Juneteenth means to you and to our community and how you celebrate Juneteenth?
First of all, I like what Sydney said about celebrating Juneteenth till July 4th, because I think it's real significant that a Black person was the first to die for the independence of this country, Christmas addicts. So, but also Juneteenth. I grew up in my mother's drill team, Denver, Colorado Steppers. And, of course, I had no choice. I was one of the banner boys. And so we marched in pretty much all the parades going on throughout the year. But of course, Juneteenth, I really look forward to it because it was about us, And so coming up with that, I really enjoyed the drum and bugle corps. And I personally, I really liked the drum and bugle corps, and growing up at that time, playing an instrument was the thing to do. So I got influenced to play the drums. So I kind of connect, the whole parade thing and the drum and bugle in the Juneteenth parade to kind of give me an influence to decide to play an instrument, and that was the drums. So tying that all into actually, once I became a firefighter and remembering the Juneteenth parade and kind of being here as a native of Denver and seeing the change that was taking place, because we marched from what was back then, one of our predominantly Black high schools, routed down through the 5 Points. And there was a lot of history with the 5 Points, and then the Juneteenth parade, and then, starting to see the gentrification going on. And there was a point there where they were actually trying to talk about changing the name of the 5 Points. But it's a historical district, so hopefully they don't win that battle.
Yes, I agree.
So when I became a firefighter, we have Colorado Black Professional Firefighters, an organization that was founded in 1978. So I made it a point to always be in the Juneteenth parade with, the few Black firefighters that we had, because with the hope of possibly influencing some young Black men that might, possibly ever want to take on a career as a firefighter, and it was important for them to see themselves in us as being firefighters. So that's kind of what my influence was.
That's excellent. And yes, there is a lot of history and a big celebration in Denver, Colorado, and just throughout Colorado for Juneteenth. Darwin, so you have backgrounds from many different places. And so I would like to ask you what Juneteenth means to you, how you celebrate it. You're from DC, but also you are one person that have literally been in more physical states than I have, that I personally know. I think your count is 47 states, and I think I have physically been in 40 states, including Alaska. So I would like to hear from you what Juneteenth means to you, as you have, like I said, traveled throughout our country and have experience both here in San Diego as well as in Washington, DC, and any other place in between.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you again, Sonja, for inviting me back on. I appreciate it. And just also, please excuse Buki. She's on duty. She's a nurse. So that's why she keeps bouncing up around.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And for me, actually, with Juneteenth, putting aside all this my family history, one level just, it always really strikes a very deep chord, because my grandfather actually is from Galveston, Texas. And he's part of that migration west for Black folks, of course, coming from places like Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. And then I have other relatives that are from Louisiana. And the other part too, I'll share, and it's a similar thing with the dynamics for us in the Black community. A lot of the stories from the South, my mom would not share with me in terms of trying to protect me, because like the thing about wounds, the pain associated with it. But my grandfather, what it was that he witnessed a lynching. And he was actually a shoe shiner boy. And he had witnessed a lynching in terms of, he saw that these white mob was chasing after this Black man, and then later saw him hanging a rope. And because he saw that, of course, my family were terrified. So they sent him out. They got him out of the state. And that's why he ended up in California. And one of the reasons why, I do share that story, and it's important on occasions like this, like Juneteenth, to recognize that is that history, and also how recent it is. I'm always struck as a professor that my other job, my day job, teaching in the classroom, how much the students don't know. And they get the thing about, like, Lincoln freed the Black people, that was hundreds of years ago, and this narrative about progress. And so I appreciate about Juneteenth, but then we have to always do the thing about, it's an ongoing struggle. And I did want to also just share real quickly with part of this, because I was at a press conference yesterday, putting on my other hat, Carlsbad, about an incident with the police. And the part that I think is just really critical is that how we continue to struggle, in the sense that we like to, again, with that racial narrative about slavery and then being freed, as if that for us has meant that not just that it's gotten better and there's progress in our society, but almost a thing where that is less responsibility for us and less work to do for continuing that liberation. And there was an incident with Marcel Cox Harshaw that was arrested by the Carlsbad police. And again, it's one of those ones that, like George Floyd and like so many of these, never needed to escalate, never should have been stopped. At best, they thought he was drunk. He was dealing with the paramedics. The police literally intervened. And literally the video, that's why I'm sharing it, that it is on YouTube, is you can see they're pushing on his head on the concrete. And again, this harkens back to that image that we just went through with George Floyd. And I also bring it up because it's a reminder that we also have a lot of work to do here in San Diego area too. And again, it's not something outside San Diego, some national phenomenon. And that we really should take this time with Juneteenth to also talk about our struggle, what we still need, and the work that we still need to do. So I did want to share that.
I agree. And I'm definitely going to officially introduce you guys. As you know, we were making attempts to integrate our show with the NAACP's North San Diego County, which is creating a little challenges, but we were still up for the challenge of trying to do that. So I'm going to ask Buki to share her thoughts, and then I will do as I normally will, just give you guys more of a informal introduction, because we're all family. So Buki, if you can let me know what Juneteenth means to you, and thank you for being here, and thank you for serving as a nurse. I mean, nurses are sometimes so underrated and appreciated. So thank you for being here as you're on call, doing your duty for us in the community, as well as what you do professionally. But can you share with us what Juneteenth means to you, what it means to our community, and the ways that you celebrate Juneteenth?
So personally for me, I was born and raised in Nigeria. Left the country 17 years old to go to Benin Republic, also in Africa. So you can also tell from my introduction that I don't have much of a Juneteenth childhood. But what I do have is my late father was a diplomat. So he served for many, many years. So we had all kinds of friends come in and out of the house, and we had a lot of travel in my childhood and my early adult years, which exposed us to a lot of reading and learning about different cultures. So yes, Juneteenth for me was my knowledge from books and what my parents and his American friends would share with us. And funny enough, from different perspectives, because he had some white American friends and some African American friends. So that was my influence of Juneteenth. And then I had more closer relationships with Juneteenth, the topic, when I moved to Germany as an entertainer, working with a lot of African Americans in Germany that were some were military and some were just, entertainers and 9-to-5 folks. So that's my exposure to Juneteenth.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. So I would like to give more of a formal introduction to or informal, because like I said, we're all family, introduction to the voices that you've already heard. So we have Sidney Cooper, with the Cooper's Family Juneteenth celebration. He's also in the financial industry and does a lot with our youth and our community just at large. We have Deborah Taylor. She's also a community advocate, a book club president for decades, as well as she works for a global consulting firm. We have Buki Domingos. She is a nurse, and she's also had spent time in Germany, as well as she says she's from Nigeria and throughout the USA. She's a singer, songwriter, instrumentalist, a board president of Activists San Diego. She has a radio show, and she is a founder of the Racial Justice Coalition here in San Diego. And she has received many community awards throughout her time in serving her community. We have Robbie Stevens. He's also a family man. He's a Denver native. He's a CU alum. Go Buffs, so am I. He's part of the Colorado Black Professional. What just happened?
I think we're still on.
Okay, can you guys see me? I don't know what just happened.
Oh, wait, I can see and hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So we have Robbie Stevens, my apology, cuz family man, Denver native, CU alumni, Colorado Black professional firefighters for 27 years. And he's also a Phi Beta Sigma fraternity owner, patent product, the Big Push, as well as other community activist activities. And we have Darwin Fishman. He is an author, professor at UC San Diego, San Diego State University. He's also been part of the board of and conversations of race and a co-founder of the Racial Justice Coalition. He's a commission on the Juvenile Justice for San Diego County, served as a board member on the San Diego Community Review Board on police practices, and a very traverse traveler, as I mentioned earlier. So again, thank you everyone. Thank you for being here today. So another question I would like to propose is, what are some ways that you think slavery has still been, I guess, somewhat not all the way abolished here in our country, even though, as we know that Juneteenth is supposed to be the celebration of that. Can you express, I'll ask Darwin, as he started to allude to some of these issues of how slavery, we're still fighting for our freedom. Can you share that with me, please?
All right. Yeah, no, thank you. It's a really good question. And part of it, again, I go back to my my relatives in the South, Louisiana. When we go back for family reunions, I mean, they straight up will say that we have white relatives, but they won't come to the family reunion because they're worried about lawsuits.
Wow.
My relatives, we still have the property, and we're just out on the outside skirts of this town in Louisiana, the proper city where there's services or where the white folks are. So in that sense, you know, on one level, slavery comes alive every time I go to the South, and it's very apparent. It's literally divide land-wise, whose resources, why people are still in poverty. And I think, again, one level, especially here in Cali, we could take that for granted. There's other aspects of it, but it is that raw and still in places like Louisiana. And I think that's really important. It's all aspects of their lives, for the jobs that are available to them, property that they can buy. And I think that's really critical. And it's not surprising, you know, that it's very much part of our culture, our fabric in our society. But quite often it's a thing where we don't want to talk about it directly. And I think that's really critical, especially also for passing down other generations, being able to explain that, and that weight, that responsibility is still there for us, and we still have a lot of work to do.
I totally agree. Buki, would you like to chime in and share where you see where our freedoms as within our Black community, that we're still having to fight for it, or where it's still relevant, even though, you know, we're celebrating Juneteenth that was commemorated in 1865? Come on, Miss Racial Justice Coalition.
That's a very complex question.
Very.
And I definitely come from the space of a Black woman who has 4 sons and who has been here for several years. And just a regular person in my day-to-day life, and looking at what is going on right now in the country and what happens every now and then. It just remains a struggle where I believe that.
How do you experience race here? Let's talk about
it's complicated. I don't know how to.
We'll come back. We'll come. Yeah.
It's really complicated because I am Black, yet not Black enough for certain spaces because I'm not African American. And then in other spaces, I am Black and African American to some people. So the complication in there is not Black enough.
I mean, but at the end of the day, anybody, regardless if they know your ethnicity, they see your color, right? So I think if you can address it from that level, so it doesn't matter if you're from the Caribbean, if you're from Africa, or regardless where you live, right? So just unfortunately, just by your appearance, you could experience anything, but we can come back to you on that.
Yeah, please come back. I'd like to think about that a little.
Auntie Debbie, I would like to hear from you. Do you still see that our fight for freedom is still relevant today, although Juneteenth, like I said, the celebration of it was back in 1865?
Yes, because the enforcement of the 13th Amendment. So when the amendment got passed, and it was 2.5 years before Texas even found out about it, that meant that we were 2.5 years behind from the jump. So just trying to constantly catch up from the original proclamation of freedom, it seems like we're always behind, but we can't give up the fight. The fight's not going to end, or we have to keep it up, because the only way that you can make a change is to be a change. We have to be the salt and the light. We have to step up.
Yes, yes, I agree. I remember learning about Juneteenth even from one of my other aunts, and just the way she explained it, that how, you know, the slaves were already free, but here's these slaves, 250,000 slaves in Galveston, Texas, right? In this Texas area that was still operating under suppression and being oppressed and suppressed and being, you know, enslavement. And those slave masters just chose not to let them know that the Emancipation Proclamation had passed. So here they are still operating under the slavery when other slaves have been freed. And then they finally get the news on June 19th, 1865, that they actually do have legal freedom, you know, to
Equal
work.
rights.
Equal rights, and to work for wages and not be enslaved. And that just like blew my mind, like, man, that is jacked up. I remember being young and just thinking like, man, that is so foul that they just chose not to let them know, you know, that communication to go down. So Robbie, I want to hear your voice. I would like to hear what you think about where we are at as far as still trying to obtain totally, you know, true freedoms here in the United States.
Well, first of all, I think well, slavery affected everybody, you know, us, of course, and also white folks, because they were raised and to believe a certain thing. So when you looked at the numbers, 155 years, that's not that long ago. For the end of slavery, it's like, wow, really? But, and then you add on all the rest of the years that we were in slavery. While we're in slavery, you know, they're coming over here building the states and all this other stuff, and of course on the backs of us. So yeah, it's more than, I would say, more than 500 years behind. And also, the color of our skin is always going to be a disqualification, you know, for us to qualify for stuff, or to get the best deals or the equal deals, you know, as our counterparts. And, you know, one day on the job, I kind of put this to the test as far as how we were raised to always work hard. We got to work 2 and 3 times harder just to get the same thing. I had one of my white firefighters, you know, and of course, I mean, I drive the rig, the fire truck. So he was sitting in the back, and the passenger was a friend of mine that I've known since junior high school. Of course, we're both Black, he's white, and we're talking, and I just bring it up, you know, and I ask him straight out. It's like, okay, so, so we were raised, you know, that we got to work hard and just to try to get the same thing. And I bet that you were raised to believe that you were better than us. And he agreed that he was raised to believe that, you know, he was better than we were. So it's like, it's all the way, you know, always, it's still going on today, you know, and it doesn't matter. I mean, we had a medical run, you know, going to help somebody. We're wearing uniforms, getting off a fire truck, and they don't want to let us in their house. So, I mean, you know, I think we just have to continue to educate ourselves and try to do a little better financially, get back to owning some stuff, bring back our Black Wall Street.
Absolutely. Sydney, I would like to hear your voice on where you think where we're at as far as really having our full, full freedoms here in this country today. Although, the celebration of Juneteenth was back in 1865. What are your thoughts as where we're at and where we need to go? I think he lost a little connectivity. So I'm going to open this up and want to know, what are your thoughts on, given the history of slavery in this country, do you think Juneteenth should be a national holiday? Who'd like to answer that question?
Can I add to what I was about to say before
I'm sorry. I think Sydney. Yeah, I think we're having some connectivity with Sydney.
I'm sorry.
Sydney, we have a little disconnect or connectivity. We can't hear you right now. I'm not sure if you have a full, can you hear me? It's kind of like that.
Oh, he's gone. Now I don't see him.
Okay, so Boogie, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, you asked the question previously on where we're at in the US as of today in regards to past. And I think
I
that
keep going in and out. I apologize. I don't know if you can hear me.
Are you there, Sydney? So Buki is now answering a question, and we're going to come back to you as you're trying to log back on. Buki, can you go ahead? Yeah,
I think it has morphed. So back in the day, and everything we have read and watched and seen before our time, before my time in the US, things are more overt and it was more on paper. And what I've seen is that it is not necessarily on paper, but it's very much alive. And that's why we have the demos and the protests. And that's why we still have the degree of police brutality that we have today, as it was back in the day of King. So literally, I have done things where I've played old speeches from back in the day and new people talking, millennials, Gen Zs, and the issues are pretty much the same. Most of the time, we're still trying to fight for equity. We're still trying to fight for our rights. And what makes it worse in our day is most of these things are actually on paper. Most of these things are legal. So that just makes it a more difficult battle to fight when the colonial master or the slave master gives you the keys, pretty much dangles them in front of you. And when you try to reach for those keys, they snatch them away and say, no, you can't have that. So that's the
or
battle.
drop them on the ground.
Exactly, drop them on the ground, and when you try to pick them up, they kick you down. So that's what we're dealing with. That's the best way I can describe what is going on today, because some may argue that, oh no, we've come a long ways, like we're able to vote and we're able to do such and such. But when they block ex felons or ex people that were incarcerated from voting, that's also another way of taking that power away. When they don't give certain people with certain zip codes the kind of education that other people with certain zip codes have, that's also another way of showing their hand that yes, we're still very much in control. So you can jump up and down all you want and think you're free, but the truth is you're never really free, because we hold those keys to the kingdom. And it starts from the top, because now you're looking at the Electoral College, and we know that Hillary won the popular vote. So how is it possible that we are where we are today? So these are things that we're dealing with in our society today that may seem different.
And I think that's a problem that you mentioned, the fact that some view it as a kingdom, right? And that's a problem, because when you look at a kingdom, and even as far as from a spiritual perspective, right? And from God's kingdom, it's supposed to be a democracy, right? So it's not supposed to operate like a kingdom, right? It's only supposed to operate by, with a democracy, with everyone having a voice. So I think that in itself is a major problem, that's some people's view in the way that things are operated. And so there's a different set of rules, if you will, unfortunately. So Sydney, now we have you live. We want to hear your thoughts. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So my first point was I really like what Robbie was talking about in terms of economics. I think that, I don't know if you guys have seen that 13th Amendment, the document on Netflix by Ava DuVernay.
Oh yeah, it's good.
It is very good. And so the point that I take from that in terms of your question of us being free, if we know that once the Emancipation Proclamation was actually passed and the last slaves were set free, rights were taken away. I don't know if you guys can hear me, but rights were taken away. And as those rights were taken away, they were actually imprisoning Black men at a higher rate to create a labor force that was free again. And so we see that repeating through our history. So technically, I think we're all right in terms of we're truly still not free. And I think the economic part of it really drives it.
I totally agree. And I know my dad and some of the other, like I said, Robbie mentioned it, and some of, other family members definitely share that same viewpoint that you just shared. So one of the things I wanted to share as far as my own personal feelings and thoughts about some of this, when I read in history about some people thinking that the world was flat, right? And that was the general consensus. They all thought the world was flat until we had some of those explorers, right? And expeditions start taking place, and they came back and they reported like, no, the world is actually round. And so there was still a population of people that still thought the world was flat. And even though with science was proven that the world is round. So I'm using that same metaphor because as a young girl growing up here in San Diego, as well as I mentioned before, my dad being in the military, having opportunities to live in many different other regions as well, my understanding with going to school, doing the right thing, this is the formula, is that people understood that we as Black people, we are human, right? That we have blood, that we're full human beings, part of the human race, even though you have some still thinking that we're only 2/3 human, right? So I felt that we evolved as a race of people, as a human race. My understanding is growing up is that people no longer think that way because they know now that the world is real. They know now that Blacks are competent and that we're human and we're valuable. And so as I got older and I realized of some of the challenges that I'm having is that while there's still a population of people that still think the world is flat, right? That still want to go, with the whole MAGA slogan, right? Want to go back to something instead of moving forward. And so that was eye-opening to me, and still trying to grapple that difference of why people see the Black community differently than they would any other community, right? And so that's the whole concept of that, the world is flat versus the world is round. And so based on some of those challenges that I know that we've all shared just being in this community, and Robbie, thank you for opening up of your experiences, being on the front line of being a first responder, right? That some don't even want you to come in their house. That's a major issue. Can you describe some of examples of fortitude that you believe that our community, represent, that our community, exhibits? Auntie Debbie, would you like to share some of the fortitude that you see in our community?
The not giving up, the continuing the fight, to stay strong, to stay steadfast, to, make things happen.
Okay.
And even if it's, we've got to continue what got us here thus far and further. Because it doesn't do you any good to register to vote and you don't vote in the regional and local elections where you get your state representatives, where you get your state senators, where you get your school board. If you're not being active in your local registration and voting, you can't affect the national level. You got, what they say, it starts at home first. We've got to, is everybody in your family registered to vote and voting?
Right. Thank you for sharing that. Buki, do you want to share some of your examples of where you feel that our community exhibits some fortitude?
in organizing, for example, at grassroots levels. I think that's really, really huge. I remember when I was fairly new in the US, how people would like to just chime into federal, national election, national issues. Everybody wants to jump on that and rally and march. And when you were dealing with local issues, you know, like carotid restraint or just dealing with, you know, gang registration, people would, you know, it was always lukewarm reactions. And now I think it's important that folks understand that, like Ms. Deborah had said, you have to clean up your house first before you can try to go out next door and clean the other house. So that's what I think is really crucial for a community, that people are learning that we have local issues, not to dismiss the national issues, but if we organize really strong on the local level, like we have used George Floyd in San Diego as a catalyst to push our local issues. That's the exact example that is, you know, it's ideal for organizing.
I agree. And Darwin, Dr. Darwin, would you also share some examples of where you feel that our community exhibits fortitude?
Yeah, you know, following the local, I mean, the best example we have of our story, Monica Montgomery winning by 5 votes, just 5 votes the first time. So if anyone's got, you know, 5 people sleeping that day.
Do you mean the primary? The primary one?
Yeah, city council, yeah. And she beat a 2-term incumbent, Myrtle Cole. So it's an extraordinary story about the whole thing about the power of local.
But Darwin, you got to remember the incumbent was the council president.
Oh yeah.
That too.
Yeah.
Council president.
Yeah. And Monica Montgomery beat her the first, this last time by 5 votes. And the thing about the 5 votes, why I'm just, you know, harping on that, of course, is that whole thing about the power of voting on a local level. And we know now from the standpoint, there's a radical difference with Monica in office now than if Myrtle had been elected again. Politics does matter. But I did want to also just add real quickly, I think also what I would do is, of course, put a plug in, following what Buki said about the collective part, us working together. Part of the thing that was so extraordinary about our work with the Racial Justice Coalition for 3 years trying to end chokeholds, making chokeholds illegal in San Diego, is it was a multiracial coalition. And people that didn't necessarily even sit down in the same room, we helped to bring them together through this organizational structure and empowering these groups, union platform. And during that entire time, not only was it the police chief that would not, you know, meet with us, sit down with us, the mayor dismissing us, but a lot of other activists and organizers saying, oh, that's not how it's done in San Diego. Chokehold, that's here forever. You're not going to get rid of that.
And that was my comment about, oh, you're not really from here. You don't understand. Like, you just don't come in here and change police policy. Like, who are you again? Like, no. Like, we have people telling us, no, I mean, how long has it been already? Just, you know, just look for another issue, because, and the police chief telling people in open meetings, and it's all over the news. Like, you can pull it up online saying, no, never. Like, using LA as an example, saying no, when they banned it in LA, crime increased by 600%. And people just telling us, hey, this is a military town. Yeah. You people need to let this one go.
Yeah.
But, you know, we prevailed, right, recently. So that's been very successful. Yeah. And so, Robbie, what are your thoughts, or how would you describe our fortitude as a committee in general?
I think we're doing pretty good. I think we need to keep on pushing. I think what has taken place with, you know, all the marching and protesting and everything that has gone global is pretty significant. And I hope that we can build on this, you know, to expand in the other areas of, you know, I'll bring it up again, you know, the financial areas and the political areas. And, you know, I think I reflect a lot on us as being Black Americans, that we need to probably, you know, I don't think the younger generation, you know, they're probably not in touch with this concept, but to understand that how we have survived, you know, to go from, you know, to be ripped away from our native country, or continent, and to come here and have no native language, no native culture or traditions or anything, and to come up like we have, and today with our culture being the global culture that everybody adheres to, or gravitates towards, I mean, come on, we need to get in on our own selves, because everybody else is, like what's his name, Paul Mooney says, everybody want to be black, but don't nobody want to be black.
Good point. Good point. So I definitely agree with our collective conscious, community, and I believe that's what everyone was speaking on. Local level organizing, coming together, and so I had an opportunity. Yesterday we went to a Juneteenth celebration. We got there late, right? But it was still a lot of people out, and I remember just sitting back and kind of, to Robbie's point, I sat back and I was like, man. You know what I'm saying? Just look at our people, that even through the struggle, the challenges, the joy that we could still hold on to, and the beliefs that we would still, no matter what, just believe that we can move forward, that, tomorrow, the sun will come out tomorrow. And so I just think that the fortitude is like, I don't know any other race that will want to walk in our shoes, right? Want to experience, like you said, being stripped away from everything, but yet we're still standing.
Still standing.
We're still standing. So I want to get an
Still
opportunity.
moving forward, not going backward.
Yes. I just want to give an open opportunity for anyone to share your feelings and thoughts, as we're celebrating Juneteenth, our community.
Yeah, let me just also say real quickly, I'm sorry Sydney dropped off. Cooper family event, I was on there earlier watching a Zoom, and one of my sweet memories from moving to San Diego, we had this joke with my other friends about we couldn't find the Black community in San Diego, and Juneteenth was the first event where we saw this huge Black community, and it was amazing. And it really helped me to feel at home. And I think, again, that's that part about that collective voice. I think that's so important, that we come together and we have those celebrations. And I so much appreciate the Juneteenth here with the pictures and the history that were also included in the booths, and being able to interact with people. So I think that's also really critical for us as we go forward, that we continue to do that kind of work and that kind of public work too.
I totally agree. Any other thoughts, Auntie or Robbie?
I just want to say what an honor it's been to be on the panel with everyone. And thank you so much for inviting me to share my Juneteenth stories. And I love you guys, and thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Robbie?
Yeah, thanks guys for inviting me to be a part of this. This was really nice.
Yeah, I also appreciate it. And so just sharing a little bit more personal history, where my grandfather, well, actually both sides of my family migrated to Colorado, but my aunt is correct. We came from Texas. So there's a lot of, roots and experiences that our family had in Texas. And one of the things I've been fortunate enough, at least for the first few generations, is to know that all my grandparents on both sides of my family, they were high school graduates, and Papa was valedictorian of his class, right, Auntie?
Yep, he sure was.
And Gran was also of her class, right?
Yeah,
so,
she was salutatorian.
Right, exactly. And so one of the
Balance out.
Auntie, I thought you was going to bring up is where my other grandfather on my dad's side of the family, he, went to school, went to the University of Chicago, got his graduate degree, and then migrated to Colorado and was a professor. The university now is USC, but he was a professor there, and he taught. Auntie, you want to share that story where he had the first American
Studies class at
Yeah.
what's now USC Pueblo. It was
Right.
CSU Pueblo now. It
Right.
used to be called USC, University of Southern Colorado.
Right. So my grandfather was a professor there, and he had the first African American studies, and he would also invite my other grandfather to come and speak to the class as far as being an entrepreneur, right, and having your own business. And so I just want to thank that I had representations of both sides of my family here with me today, and want to just say that, you know, I believe that as we continue to, like we said, organize, unify, and mobilize as a collective conscious community, that we will start seeing the changes that our community deserves. So thanks,
Great.
everyone.
Thank you, darling.
All right. I see you guys back next
Thank you.
week on Sun.
I'll see you on Sun.